1. Some minor background. I live in Quebec, a land of two dominant languages, French and English. I myself am English, but know enough French to have a polite, albeit slow, conversation. On a side note, the friend I'll be mentioning shortly is perfectly bilingual. Yesterday I decided to do a grocery run on my way home from work. Since I use public transit, I tend to take a taxi home when I do groceries and invite my friend along for the ride since she lives nearby. I get to the grocery store and my friend is nowhere to be seen, so I grab a cart and wait near the entrance where I will certainly be seen. I pop in my earbuds, start blasting some dance music, and have a little one-person dance party as I wait for my friend to show up. As I'm jamming out, I notice that every other person leaving the grocery store is leaving their carts near me, instead of putting them away, so I start moving a few feet away every time I start to get surrounded. Normally, I'd take the time to put them away and do my good deed for the day, but my friend should be showing up any minute, so I just leave it for the actual people who are working there. After a few more attempts to box me in are made, I hear an older woman shouting at me. In her defense, she may have been talking to me for a minute or two before, but as I said, one-person dance party over here. I pop out an earbud and realize the lady is yelling at me in heavily accented French. I do a quick double check to make sure I'm not doing anything illegal, and assume she's blaming me for the carts that are strung around. Having just finished a long day of work and not wanting to put in the effort to find out, I simply tell her, "Désolé, je ne comprends pas." Sorry, I don't understand, in a heavy English accent before popping back in my earbud and continuing my dance party. Everything is going fine until something heavy and soft smacks me in the back of the head. The lady had swung her bag of groceries containing an iceberg lettuce, among other things, and had split the bag open, scattering the contents all over the ground, and also knocking both earbuds out. She now has my full attention, and I listen to her complain about how lazy I am, and telling me to pick up her groceries. Getting hit by a head of lettuce sounds painful, but it's closer to being hit by a particularly heavy pillow, so I'm not in pain or anything. But the audacity of this one to accost me, and then order me around, even if I had worked there, has made me livid. I respond in the following censored manner. "What the heck, lady? You freaking hit me and try to order me around. What is your gosh darned problem, you crazy witch?" I then switch over to French and share my favorite French insults, just in case she isn't getting the point. The lady immediately begins mumbling, "Désolé, désolé, désolé." Sorry, as she backed up to her car. My friend shows up shortly after that, and we do our groceries as usual, just with a lot more laughter and her assuring me that she will show up on time tonight. Edit. Just in case it wasn't clear, she believed I was one of the young guys who typically rounds up the carts, and was ignoring his work to play on his phone. Not sure of the job title. 2. So first, the obligatory "this was several years ago" thing. It was my senior year of high school in a pretty large, well-off area of coastal California. I'll recite everything to the best of my memory's capabilities. I had grown up there, and had been going to this small, independently owned coffee shop since my freshman year. I'm generally a shy guy, but I like to think of myself as nice to talk to, once I open up to you. Anyway, during my sophomore year, I made friends with the cashier girl that worked most weekdays at that coffee shop. For the sake of time and anonymity, we'll call her Elle. She was older than I was at the time, probably in her mid-20s. But through a couple of years of small talk in the line while ordering, and talking during her breaks, we became decent friends. Fast forward a couple of years to my senior year. School had just let out for lunch, and most of the seniors go off campus, whether it be to get lunch or just to get away from school for a bit. I ran over to my favorite coffee shop to grab a bite to eat, and some coffee to keep me awake through government class. Teacher was god-awfully boring, I walked through the doors and saw only 2 people in the line. Sweet. As I walked over to the line, I waved to Elle. She smiled and waved back, then continued working. A couple minutes passed, and it was just about my turn to order. The previous customer stepped out of line, and right as I was about to walk closer to begin my order, a total asshole, TA for short, stepped in front of me and began to order. He was in dressy casual attire, with a laptop bag, probably in his 50s. I was honestly kinda shocked. I thought that maybe he didn't realize I was in the line. TA, I'll have a medium cinnamon latte Suddenly, Elle quips up and goes, Elle, excuse me, sir, but I think that young gentleman was in front of you in line. TA, gentleman? He's a kid, he can wait for an adult. I was totally shocked at the rudeness, but I wasn't going to say anything because I was pretty shy at the time, and I didn't know what to say. Just as he finished his order and started to pull his wallet out, Elle piped up again. Elle, well, excuse me, sir, but I don't think that's right. And he's a paying customer too. In fact, he's a regular here, and I'd much rather have his business than yours. You can either stand in line and wait your turn, or you can leave. TA, really? Elle, yes, really. TA, fine, whatever. Get your ass over here and order, pointing to me, then to the cash register. I've got important things to get to. So I walked over and smiled at Elle, thinking to myself how awesome she was and how I never would have stood up for myself. She and I both smiled the whole time I ordered, and just as I was about to step away, she whispered to me, "Stay for a bit to watch him." So I sat at the counter and waited for my drink and sandwich to come out. I watched Elle take the TA's order and ate my sandwich while watching her make his coffee. When she handed it to him, he grabbed it out of her hands and rushed out the door to his parked BMW out front. Second he left the shop, Elle pointed and said, "Watch for a sec." I looked back outside the window, just in time to see TA swing his car door open, the lid fly off the coffee cup, and hot coffee spilling everywhere in the driver's seat of his car. We could hear him yell, "Fuck!" from outside. Elle turned to me and said, "I barely put his lid on, hoping something like that would happen." I giggled like a little girl for a long while. We talked while we watched TA attempt to clean and dry his car seat, until he eventually peeled out of the parking lot in a hurry. I never got Elle's number, but I wish I did. She was a cool chick, and I'll never forget the time. She was a total boss on my behalf. 3. I was happily running the customer service desk at our large regional grocery store. Good times. I was approached by cranky Granny with her grandchild. I greeted her and asked what I could do for her. Cranky Granny, "You should know, I already sent 2 emails off about this problem." Me, "Okay, what's the matter? Can I do anything?" She tells me that Store App had a rebate that was available to use. After a moment, she brings up Store App on her phone and shows me the rebate she is supposed to get. But when she tried to use it, the cashier told her that they weren't able to process them yet. As she speaks, she becomes louder and more irate. Cranky Granny, "And I came all the way across town just to buy a grandchild a toy. And now they tell me I can't buy it with my rebate." Me, "Wow, that must be frustrating. But I can tell you that the cashier is correct. Until the rebates are actually mailed out to the customers, we are unable to process them." She points out that Store App notified her, and she wouldn't have come in if it hadn't. Then she diverges into a rant about how loyal she has been to the store over the years. In fact, she used to drive 12 miles, 12, to visit our store, rather than a closer grocery store. Cranky Granny, "And if I go back there," points to back of store, "and get a toy and my rebate doesn't work, I am gonna be pissed. Your store might just lose me as a customer. Forever." My active listening skills have come on deck, and I try to de-escalate or mitigate her anger. I acknowledge her concerns, repeat back to her what she's told me, and ask a couple of questions. She's still mad, and she wants me to know it. Me. Let me give you this feedback form. I will pass on what you've said to my boss, but it'll mean a lot more coming from you. They don't have to listen to me, but they really don't want people ticked off. Cranky Granny takes form, reiterates how she's already sent two emails about this. Feel emboldened, I decide to push it a bit. Me. Now, if you're looking for somewhere to direct that anger, I suggest you contact the rewards card company directly. I point out their phone number on her receipt. They are the folks that sent out that notification ahead of time, and I bet they would appreciate hearing from you. Cranky Granny walking away. I already sent two emails. If my rebate doesn't work, heads are gonna roll. Me, okay, well, they won't work yet, but I can promise you that they will be available soon. Obviously, they sent you a notification before. She cuts me off. Cranky Granny still walking away. I know a lot of people who will be very unhappy about this. I watch as she pushes her shopping cart away, still very much angry. I wonder what outcome would have made her happy. I wonder if she actually listened to a word I said. And then I got back to work. 4. So I used to work as a cashier for a superstore. I was one of many seasonal employees. It was Thanksgiving Day, and my store was open so people could get Black Friday deals even earlier. But it wasn't anywhere near as busy as we thought it was going to be. I was at one of the further tills, so I wasn't getting much traffic at all. Then finally, this one woman and her kid, who was probably 12 or 13, came up with a cart full of clothes, and I figured I was going to be busy for a little while. At no point did I fully realize just how long I was going to be busy for. She was completely polite to me, and so was her daughter. But as she's putting things up onto the belt, she's stopping to consider every item, some for over a minute at a time, and their cart was full of clothing, hung up over the sides. I quickly got antsy, but didn't have a queue, and she wasn't ever rude to me, so I figured I might as well stay calm and just let her do her thing. I'm paid by the hour, and I was gonna be there until 3 AM. What's the harm? It got a little ridiculous when she started trying on some of the jackets and asking her daughter for an opinion. At that point, I finally realized that I was going to be here for a lot longer than I anticipated. Some people were slow like this, yeah, and like to consider some items a bit before deciding to buy them or not. But this woman was still shopping. Luckily, there wasn't anybody behind her, and we had a surplus of cashiers on hand, so I just turned off my light. My manager came by and gave me a look, then glanced over at the woman. He vaguely realized what was happening, and we shared a slight, "I'm not really sure what's going on, but okay," shrug. She started complaining about how she shouldn't be spending all this money, kind of to herself. Her daughter and her had apparently already been over for Black Friday deals. Again, it's still Thanksgiving, so she was obviously stressed. That's when she checked the total of all I've scanned and got confused. She asked where her 30% off is. Cue my soul shriveling up. I then reluctantly explained to her that the only way to get 30% off of all the clothing was to have our store's coupon app. A very common stressful miscommunication. Obviously, if she doesn't know this, she doesn't have the app, and that damn thing was a nightmare to try to download while in store. The Wi-Fi plane did not work. But no way was she going to spend 30% more than she anticipated, and I sympathized with that. So I continued to wait as she enlisted her daughter's help to download the app. I tried to explain it as best I can, but we wasted over 5 minutes while they accidentally download the store's app, which is completely different from the coupon app. And we went through the whole damn process, getting them signed up and everything, only for it to be the wrong app. I swear to God, when that poor girl showed me her phone and all I saw was the regular app, it was crushing. But we finally got the app downloaded, logged in, and I taught them how to use it. Okay, we've wasted more than 10 minutes at this point, but at least we have that figured out, and they're both still very polite. But the woman then continued to go through her cart. She gave me about half the things that were in the cart to put back. So my abandoned bin is overflowing. And she was still at it. And once again, she got stuck on a jacket. She tried one on, and her daughter, who was getting frustrated at this point, tells her it looks good and she should just get it, but then, oh no, it's too small. So she said she was going to go switch it out. The clothing section isn't too far from the tills, so that's not a completely ridiculous thing. But she just walked away, walked, completely unhurried. Most people run or at least speed walk when something like this happens. So I'm shocked, and she left the poor daughter with me. I didn't want her to feel bad, so I struck up some awkward conversation. She was very sweet, and it seemed like she was used to this. Also, I noticed a few times while her mom had been sorting through the clothing, she had been placating her by saying she didn't need most of the clothing they'd picked out for her. And, well, her mom had left some of them on the belt, just sitting there. So I very casually asked if her mom would probably be buying these. She kind of hesitantly picked up on what I was trying to do, and said yes. So I smiled, scanned through the clothing on the belt, and stuffed them into bags. They weren't any big purchases, and hey, they were on the belt. And that poor kid deserved some kind of reward, honestly, for being so incredibly patient through all of that. If that had been my mom, I would have died about 5 minutes in. The woman finally came back, after around another 5 minutes, and gave me the jacket to scan. She sorted through the last of her stuff, but we finally got everything either into bags or off the belt. She balked at the total, but was relieved after the coupon app brought it down significantly. She actually seemed pleased and thanked me for my help. Pays, continues on her way. So that's how I spent around 25 minutes with a single customer during Black Friday's sales, who just did not seem to know nor care about the passing of time. Thank God it wasn't busy. I don't know what I would have done if it had been. 5. Long ago, in another career of mine, I worked in the film industry. I started as an assistant film editor, and eventually jumped unions to become a camera operator. During my illustrious camera op career, I began by filming municipal town hall meetings. You don't really realize just how bloody boring those things are until you're forced to stand for hours at one, looking at nothing but a tiny camera screen, before making it big, aka locking out through a co-worker, and getting a fairly decent position on a couple of major big-budget TV shows. I became jaded of the whole industry by the end and eventually left. However, one of the things that stuck with me was a desire to be behind a film camera and just do random stuff. Fast forward about 10 years, I'm working in another, much less glamorous industry, and I'm fully entrenched in my local car club's activities. We have 2 massive car shows every year, usually with hundreds if not thousands of cars attending. It was also around this time I had finally decided to bite the bullet and invest in a new film camera for myself. It wasn't anything super fancy like a Red Scarlet, but it was still a several $1,000 unit and blurred the line between prosumer and professional. The lens hood and focus rack setup I had on it also made anyone unfamiliar with film cameras immediately think it was a much more expensive unit than it really was. That particular summer, our car club had decided to host our annual summer meet in a new location, and we were projecting the biggest turnout we've ever had. I couldn't think of a better opportunity to take my new camera and try some new shots and angles I was wanting to get for my updated demo reel. Even though I had spent many of the previous years help run the club, I still asked for approval and got it. No waiver forms were needed because it's technically on a public lot, even though it was a private event. So the day of the event comes, and hundreds of cars start rolling in. I'm there early in the morning to help set up the event tents, and to make sure the traffic control guys are working with the local PD to ensure minimal impact on local businesses. Things seem well in hand, so I grab my camera and start filming anything that I deemed even remotely interesting. I eventually tired of static tripod shots and of slider angles, so I pop my camera off the head and start wandering around the meet. By this time the event was in full swing and absolutely packed. Everyone is having a good time. There are challenges going on near one of the event tents, and people are generally milling about. I managed to get some good candid shots of people checking out engine bays, of funky looking people and their equally funny decked out pets, and of some of the super sweet classic cars that showed up. Eventually, I come across a group of friends hanging out near their cars, so I join up and start chatting with them. By now is probably a good time to describe what I look like. It's summertime, during one of the rare heat waves this city gets, so I am in my cargo shorts and an older t-shirt I got from working on a TV series. The back is emblazoned with Film Crew, while the front has a smaller font with the name of the series it belonged to. I also have a lanyard around my neck and a press pass that IDs me as a member of the car club. It's actually a legitimate company, so we have some clout with automakers for press car reviews, being used as experts on specific things in the local news, etc. However, that ID clearly states the car club's name and no other company. I wore it so that the vendors who showed up at the meet would know I'm an official member of the group, and so I could have full access into their tents to do some behind-the-scenes shots. As I said, I'm standing there chatting with a bunch of friends, while holding my camera in a rest position on my shoulder, when we're suddenly interrupted by a shrill sound behind me. "Finally, the news decided to show up!" One of my friends snorts and smirks at that comment. A non-disclosure agreement prevents me from going into any sort of specifics, but suffice to say I had previously worked for a news outlet for a short while, and caught one of their field reporters gaming a certain segment he was doing. There was a legal kerfuffle that ended with me promising not to go public with the details. I know, but I was young at the time, and didn't want to torpedo my film career. Suffice to say, I am not the biggest fan of certain news outlets, so being called out as one was a little amusing to me and that friend. I turned around, and come almost nose to nose with an angry-looking woman. She had clearly seen the Film Crew wording on the back of my shirt, and the quick glance she took at my press card lanyard seemed to pass as an official ID for some sort of news outlet. Of course, the camera in my hands would probably have gave her that opinion regardless of whatever my shirt and lanyard said. I'm sure you're all familiar with that type by now. Actually, lady, this is an abomination. The local police department and local city should never have allowed this disgusting congregation to have happened. I can't believe those police officers on the side street are letting this go on and not having everyone towed. No, I'm a fairly reserved guy. I'm pretty quiet, and don't usually do well with confrontation. At the time, I also didn't think quite so well on my feet, so I was having trouble processing what this woman was ranting at me. Me, out of probably a good 2,000 people in the immediate vicinity. My lack of response probably seemed like I was silently agreeing with her, so the lady started back up. Lady, turn your camera on. You need to have me in your segment. I know everyone agrees with me and I need to have you record my opinion. By now my brain resembled a CFL bulb. Dim when first turned on, but slowly brightens to full output. She thought I was working for one of the local news outlets. Sorry, I think there's been a miscommunication. I don't actually work for any news stations. Lady, indignant. Of course you do. Go on, I don't have all day. This eyesore of an event needs to go away. Me, like I said, I'm not a news reporter. I'm here to hang out with my friends, to enjoy myself, and to get a few shots for my own use. With that, I start to turn around in a passive-aggressive attempt to ignore her, and to resume chatting with my friends. The lady was having none of it, however. Lady. You're exactly what's wrong with the news today. Always only wanting to show one side of a story and never the other. Always ignoring the real issues by sweeping it under the rug. Keep in mind, this was long before the recent fake news crap that's seemingly prevalent in this area of the world. Anyway, I attempt to ignore her and try to strike up the conversation that had been so rudely interrupted. Me. So anyway, that H22 swap in the 7th Gen Accord had me wondering about... Suddenly, I was falling backwards. My lanyard had been pulled up against my neck in mid-sentence before snapping. Time slowed as I felt my camera, my expensive pride and joy, come loose from my hands as I instinctively tried to brace my fall. It was one of those moments of pure shock and fear that you never forget and will occasionally relive at the weirdest times. It's like a minor PTSD event, not trying to demean those of you who have legit PTSD moments, just attempting to find a relevant metaphor. Life suddenly went from 9,000 frames per second back to 24 frames per second, and I found myself lying on the ground. Thankfully, the quick actions of one of my friends resulted in catching my camera, so my immediate worry was quenched quickly. However, I then realized my neck was throbbing and put two and two together. I look up at the woman, who now has my lanyard hanging in her hands. What the fuck, woman? As I pull myself up, the lady starts again. Lady, you and your scummy news outlet deserve that. That's what you get for not considering the real plights people are having and simply ignoring them. I'm going to get you fired, and nothing you say will stop me from talking to your manager until you're out of a job. The pedantic in me wanted to tell her that news reporters have assignment editors, not managers, but I was starting to get angry. My friends were all too shocked at what had just happened to offer much help. Thankfully, my throat was pulsating enough to get me snapped out of my usual meekness. Me. For the last time, I do not work for a news outlet. Look at my goddamn lanyard and tell me what it says. She looks at it, lady. Press pass. My name, car group name. I point at the giant banner hanging on top of the main event tent. Me. And what does that banner say? Lady, car group name. I think she's starting to get the picture. Me. And what would you do if my friends and I took you to the tent just to the left of that banner? Her eyes look over and go bug-eyed. Our local PD sets up a display every year alongside our main tent, usually with something fancy or unique. One year they had one of the helicopters actually land and be used as their display. Another year they had their mobile command center attend. This year they were showing off some of the new high-speed pursuit vehicles they had recently obtained. We had a very good relationship with the local police, I will say. Lady, I'm sorry. With that, she dropped my lanyard and all but fled through the crowd, never to be seen or heard from again. And after a dozen Motrins that night, I got my demo reel finished. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to this yet another as yet uncertainly named video. I'm thinking of calling it Too Dumb to Function or something at the moment. A lot of these stories are the kind of things I'd usually put in the adventures and retail type videos, but obviously the cameraman story at the end, not really a retail story, but it was a very good story. Didn't wanna not use it or have to start a whole new thing featuring cameramen, so I'm going with a slightly different title in this video. Whatever that may end up being. I did actually originally have, you're probably surprised to see this video here on, this will be Wednesday. I did originally have another video actually recorded and uploaded today. It was going to be 3 true scary stories, but I decided maybe something a bit more upbeat today would be better. Someone did request maybe an extra funny video, an extra happier video, and I thought, you know what, that's a good idea. I think I'm going to do that. So what will happen is the video originally for today, that'll just go back and that'll be uploaded next Wednesday again. So that'll actually save me a bit of work next week. And hopefully if I've done my job properly this video, while you might not be rolling around laughing, hopefully you'll get a few chuckles out of these stories. I certainly had a bit of fun making them. And with that, I think I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.